Again, I would like to welcome you to Application Programming. Everyone, my name is George. Nice to meet you all. Let's start first by downloading the Lab2 pattern booklet that I set up for you in the general. Go to Class Materials, Pattern Book, Lab2 Pattern Book, and download this booklet. Please let me know if you are all able to download it.
Yep, all good.
I was able to.
All good? All good? Very nice. So I'll open it up as well. This booklet, I completed my section, and you're going to follow the same way of completing your exercise pattern book. We'll discuss what is the difference between process and pattern very shortly. And then we'll talk about which process we're going to use this week. Every week we'll learn a new process, and then I'll conduct my demo. And then, guys, you'll be able to upload your booklet here, placing your name at the end. Do you have the option to upload from your end? Can you please check?
Doesn't look like it.
Doesn't matter. Regardless, complete this, and then we go to Ed, and then you can share your or submit your pattern book right here. Every time you create a new file, text file, or any kind of file, you can share your pattern here, and then update it weekly. So this is what goes for the pattern. Your pattern book starts from today. You can use Jupyter to place the text from Microsoft Word into Jupyter and create weekly patterns. Okay, so every lab, every week, we start by completing the patterns, and then we'll move to coding. Which brings me to the question, what is a pattern? Oh, you can upload. Well, which is more to the merrier, but I'm placing these for you to download and use as a template, better than you just creating everything from scratch, just fill in the blank. The most important part is you updating your pattern book on Ed. Okay, Josh? Now, brings me back to the question, what is a pattern, if you know? Let's make this lab more as a discussion between us than me like talking and you just listening and doing what I tell you. Let's make it a discussion.
Sorry, this is a little bit unrelated, but with regards to this lab here,
Yeah.
is this something that we have to be submitting, or is it just to help us?
This one I shared with you.
No. What you were just on the Ed.
On the Ed, you need to submit it.
Is there by a certain time we have to submit it?
Sorry, again?
When do we have to submit it by?
End of this lab.
Okay.
So it's basically what I gave you. When you finish exercise 1, 2, and 3, if you're looking at my screen, you copy the text and create a new text file, for example, or use Jupyter and then submit. Follow these instructions right here and then click on this submit button and then submit your weekly pattern.
Okay, thank you.
All right, but we got to do this before we jump to coding, right?
And for the that's only for the patterns book. The other parts
this is only
we
for
don't have to submit.
For the code, the sections above. For example, this is my code section. I'll complete that, and then these 3 are yours.
Okay.
And
do we have to submit these by the end of the lab as well?
No, you have time to finish them. I think end of the week or something like that. You better double check.
Okay, all good.
I think it says it somewhere on the.
End of Friday. Okay. So patterns book by the end of this lab, and then the rest
Yeah.
by the end of the week, roughly.
Q1308 at 11:59 p.m.
Okay, thank you.
But let's pay attention. This lab is weightless, so it's just a practice lab. So it does not impact your final mark. Next week, you start receiving 2% for every lab or something. Okay.
Just to clarify, is it only the code that gets marked in the future labs?
The code, and then later on, the patterns will get you extra mark.
Oh, okay, cool.
Yeah. So immediately when you submit, you receive that you pass, right? But you don't receive actual mark. And then the subject coordinator will compile the pattern books and will compile the lab submissions as well, and then we'll update your marks on Canvas. Okay, and this goes for every lab.
Got it. All right, thanks.
No problem at all. Okay, any more questions regarding the plan that we're going to use to conduct our labs? So basically, we start with a pattern book. I gave you a template, and I will do this for every lab. You complete the template, and then you place the text using, for example, Jupyter Editor here, and it is a running pattern book, so you update it every week. This goes for the pattern, and you keep this for your own record to study. Now, after we complete the pattern, I will do my demo, and then you set up and do your exercises, and I'll help you if you need help, of course. Okay, guys? Let's go back to the initial question. What is pattern, or what are patterns when it comes to programming? Not just Java programming, any programming.
A way of solving something?
Yes, this is very easy way to put it. The way of building something, or does anyone else have a different view on patterns?
It's a very common solution.
A very common solution or very known solution that people have used before in programming that became kind of trend. Okay. Now, what is a process then? If pattern is a known solution or known small plan that you could reuse to build up a solution, what is a process?
Like a series of actions?
Exactly. A series of action. Series of action means a method. Only a method contains a series of action or operations that will lead us to a solution. So when I am given a requirement, we call this a requirement, straight away in my head, I want to build a solution. So my head will go into a process of building a solution. A process will decide how to build the solution and which patterns I'm going to use in order to complete the solution. So a process in programming is the collection of one or many patterns towards building a solution. So a process such as word to code table contains one or many patterns, and combining all those patterns together, you come up with a solution to a problem. My problem here is each month has these numbers, the numbers of the month, days, show the average number of days per 12 months. So given I have these months, I need to calculate the average. We know that the average is a sum divided by count. Now, as a developer, what I'll do, I will maybe use word to code table. I already placed a solution right here. And I broke down my specifications into 4 steps. One step is to create or initialize an array. I have a collection of numbers. The best way to store these numbers in process is to maybe put them into an array or a list, but so far we know an array. So I'll create an integer array, in bracket the name of the array, and I place the data inside the array. Explicit initialization. And then I want to print output the array. So show. I will use the show pattern. And then I will calculate the average. The average is sum divided by count. That is, I will use the count pattern, which is months divided by lengths of the array. And for 12 months, I will use an array loop. So slowly, I used 1, 2, 3, 4 patterns in my process, that is word to code table, to plan my solution. All right, let me put this into edit. So, and then I will code it on the left-hand side. So first I need to create or initialize. Let's make this a full screen. Oops, not a good idea. Now I won't be able to see the other one. So int month equals, and the twelve of them containing the data. And then I said, let's use the output pattern to print this data. To calculate the average, I need the sum of those months divided by the count, which is the length of the array. And then I will use an array loop pattern to read through the array. So every time you are reading or scanning through an array or a string, which kind of loop you think we best use?
Read loop?
For loop. There are 3 types of loops: for loop, while loop, and a do while loop. When we are reading or processing an array or scanning through an array, best use a for loop. Okay, we call it an array loop. Okay, now do we have a question about how did I complete my pattern? Do you guys want to ask me anything?
Should be fine for now.
I'll ask.
Is it?
Yeah, sorry.
How do we know if we should just write like the pattern name or like delve more into the pseudocode sort of description?
It's a combination of both.
Okay.
Whatever helps you coming up with a solution. So this is why right here at the top, I said pattern or code, or combination of both. So right here, I thought code will give you better indication. Right here, I put output. Right here, code. Right here, pattern.
Okay.
So it's a combination of both.
Great.
All right. So this is my Jira demo. Later on, you could complete your tables when we get to those exercises. Now let's talk a little bit about the in.java before I complete my average days, right? The in.java class is a given class that we give to you so you can read from the keyboard. It uses a scanner class from java.util, and it allows you to read a string or a character or an integer or a double. Okay? All the methods are static, so if you want to use any of these methods, you don't need to create an instance of in class. You don't need an object. You could straight away use in dot next line, next char, next int, and so forth, which we're going to use later on. Very well. Before I proceed to the coding, do you have any questions about the patterns or process? The idea what is a pattern or process? You can see that we're going to take it very, very slowly and give you a lot of opportunity to ask any question you like. Okay, so I will follow my plan step by step. First step said create an array of integers. To create an array of integers, we specify the type, a double bracket, square bracket indicate an array, the name of the array, and then equals the instance of the array. If you don't want to populate the array at this stage, you could say new int 12. This will create an empty array. Empty array filled with 12 zeros. So if I try to print this one, I'll get 12 zeros. But this is not my intention. I want to populate the array from the get-go. So I will explicitly fill up the array. To fill up the array straight away explicitly, you open a curly bracket and you place the element separated by a comma, as such. This is pattern 1 or step 1. Step 2 is the output pattern. The output pattern is system.out.println. Output pattern is always system.out.println to jump on a new line. Now, the third step is the average. As we mentioned, the average needs a sum and needs a count. So to create a sum pattern, first we need to declare a sum starting from 0, and then we need to get the average, which is sum divided by count. Double average equals sum divided by count. The count in our case is the name of the array dot length, which is 12. Now, at this stage, I don't know sum, but the next step will scan through the array from 0 to 12 and will update sum until it reaches all the days. So the array loop goes as follows. For int I equals 0, I less than months dot length, and then I plus plus. With every iteration, I will update sum plus equal, and then the array, current array element at position I. Do you guys know what sum plus equal is? It is similar to saying sum equals to sum plus month I. This is the same. Okay? Any questions so far?
Nope.
I have a question, by the way. Is it I plus plus or plus plus I? What do you think?
I++, because it adds 1 to I at the end of the loop.
Okay, this is an opinion. Everyone else, do you agree with your friend?
I think, well, you can use either because it will always execute after the loop has run, and I think that using ++I is better because then it doesn't keep the old one in memory.
Okay, close. In my opinion, guys, whether you use I++ or ++I, in that context, it's the same. So if I decided to use ++I, the result will be the same. I'll explain why. All you care about is the result of I, and then you update later. The way the for loop works, if you want to translate that to a while loop, if you want to translate it to a while loop, this is similar to int I equals 0 while I is less than months dot length thing, then I plus plus or plus plus I. So which tells me in the do something area, you use the current value of I and then update later. This is exactly how for loop works. So the update is happening after the sum. So it will have no effect on the sum. You understand, guys? This is why whether it is I++ or plus I, the answer will always be the same, only in this context. Now, after I finish my demo, I will show you an example where ++I and I++ can actually make a big difference. Okay? So I'll delete that. Now that I updated my sum, the sample output state, I should say, average days per month equal. Now, when you are submitting your code, you should stick to the output sample IO. Okay? Otherwise, your submission will not be successful. Any questions so far? To run the code, you could either compile it with Java and the name of the file, and say run with Java and the name of the file, or we place this UI way to actually run the code. So it says I have an error somewhere. Average days, illegal start of expression, blah, blah, blah. I know where my error is, but can you tell? I left something very, very important. It's not going to be obvious, but it's very important when you are defining or making a solution for a problem. No, it has nothing to do with the actual pattern. The patterns are correct, Josh. There is something else I left out, and I wanted to see if you're going to actually catch it. No, you don't need a loop parentheses if you have a single line of code. If you have more than one line of code, yeah, you could group it into parentheses. But if you have one line of code, you don't have to. I left something really obvious and really big. Now, what is this?
The main method?
Exactly. What is this? Good. This is the class. Now, a class does not run the code. In Java, to run the code in command line, you need a method. To execute a program or project or algorithm, you need to place all the running code inside the main method. So the main method is public static void main string args, and then you open a bracket here and group all the running code inside. Now this code will run perfectly. So the main method in Java and in C and in C++ is the entry point or starting point for all programs. Every program will need a main method. You could have many other methods and many other functions and a whole lot of code. If you don't have the main method, your code will not run. As for static main string args, I will explain them in week 8 profoundly. Now, if I try and run again, it runs. Though the output is a little bit different, but it runs perfectly. We'll talk about the output in a second. Now, if you're looking at my screen, can you see the mark button? Every time you are completing one of your exercises, every time you type something in the code or change something, hit the mark button. It will give you a result. This is your output, this is my output, this is the benchmark output. Obviously, I'm incorrect. And you can do this as many times as you like. So you can mark your exercises indefinitely until the due time, okay? Or you can run the exercise in the terminal to get a result. Okay, guys? Always run to debug and proof, and then mark to check if your solution matches at benchmark. When all green means you completed your exercise and you don't have to submit anything, you already submitted. So when we are in this mode and we hit mark, every time we hit mark, we're actually making a submission. It gets registered right here in my submission log. Okay? Now let me go back to my exercise. My output is 30.0, and I don't know, I couldn't find the decimals. Can you tell me where my error is? I still have a
Sum is an int.
where? Sorry.
Int sum. It should be a double.
Let me disagree with you, Richard. It should be an int, because the numbers that you are adding are integers. The sum of all numbers is an integer. But you noticed that this is an integer division, because the left operand and the right hand operand are both integers. Therefore, the integer, it is an integer division. The result is 30. You're storing it into a double. The value gets auto-promoted to 30.0. So Ben saying I should cast something here to a double in line 10. You could either cast sum or cast months.length or cast both. If you make one of the operands a double, the whole operation becomes a double division. That's what Ben is saying. I am going to agree. And therefore, I get the exact number. If I mark, I get a pass. So I completed my exercise. And you could test and mark every time you mark, you submit as many times as you like, not just one time. Any questions? We learned very important topics in this exercise. If I ask you guys on this side of it, what is 1 divided by 2? Sorry?
0.5.
No, I agree with Ben. It's a 0. It's the same concept of what we discussed above. In mathematics, granted, it is 0.5, but in programming, it is 0. If the left-hand side is an integer and right-hand side is an integer, the result will be an integer. So what happens to the 0.5? It does not get rounded up or rounded down. It straight away gets omitted, deleted. There's no rounding. To make this a double, so we do double or float 1, and then we get a result of 0.5, as Ben said in the chat. Okay, so before you jump to your exercises, I'm gonna show you a small example about the I versus I++. It's a very, very important example. So I will add another method for me. Let's say we have an integer x equals 2, and then an integer y equals 4. Okay? And I'm gonna call this, gentlemen, scenario A. Let's say we do y equals x plus plus. We run this line of code. And then we do system.out.println. This is the output pattern. X equals Now I'm concatenating the strings, and y equals to y. Now I will copy all this code again and create a second scenario. Scenario B. I will reset x to 4 and I will reset y to 4. Okay? Instead of x plus plus, I will do plus plus x. Okay, guys? And then I'll try to print x and y. Now, after I run this code, if I do test right here, to run this method, I need to place it inside the static main. Because if I don't and run, the compiler will not recognize it. It will recognize it, it will compile it, but the JVM will not run it, Java interpreter, unless and until I place it inside the main method and run again. X is 3, y is 2, x is 3, y is 3. Now, can you tell me how did it happen? Now, when I said y equals x plus plus, x is updated and y became 2. Do you know why? For scenario A.
Because it takes the value of x before the addition has taken place.
What happens in that scenario, Nicholas, is I have two lines of code right here in front of me. I have y equals to x first, and then x plus plus. So you assign 2 into y and then update. What about scenario 2? Scenario 2 is slightly opposite. So you do x plus plus and then y equals to x. You update first, then you assign. In this context, in this scenario, plus plus x is different than x plus plus. But in a for loop or a while loop, it does not make a difference because the update is happening after sum is updated. Okay? Any questions? Very well. Now, guys and everybody, let's jump to your first exercise. Your exercise is the following. We have a small problems called read an integer until a user enter -1. If there is at least one integer, show the average value. If there is less than one integer, print nothing. So my specification is broken into several stories. The first story, read integer until -1. The second story is if at least one, show the average. The third story, if there is none, print nothing. Okay, so we break a specification into several stories. This is the sample pattern table, but for the record, for your own record, complete the pattern table into this one. Okay? Let's spend maybe 20 minutes on this or 10 minutes on this pattern table. Okay, I'll give you 10 minutes to complete it and then we'll discuss it. Complete it into this Word document so you can keep it for your record and then you can submit it in the pattern book. Any questions about what we need to do? Very well, guys. Good luck with it. I'll check back on you in 10 minutes. And of course, you can ask questions anytime in between. Guys, how are we going with the patterns? Do you need any help?
Going okay.
Okay,
We
everyone
will be
else?
going through it afterwards.
Oh, of course. We'll go through it and then we'll go through the coding together, maybe for the average days or average value, step by step. So I'm just going to wait a couple more minutes before we get into it. Okay, guys, shall we review the pattern book for this exercise together?
Yep.
Everyone, we good?
Yep.
Okay, let's have a discussion about it. Please make sure you keep this document open so you can type what we discuss, because you can save it. Right here, you can't save it, right? But for me, it's rather important to write on the left-hand side text and on the right-hand side code. Now, let's start translating this specification into stories. As we said earlier, we have 1, 2, and 3 stories. The first one will be reading an integer until -1. This read integer until -1 has been broken into the table into 2 steps. First step, it's a read in an integer. To read an integer, what we need to use in your opinion? A read pattern. If I'm translating that into the code, how does the read pattern translate? So let's say this is step 1, read pattern. How do we translate it into Java? How do we code a read pattern in your opinion?
You need a system.out.print, and then you need the input class, the nextInt method.
Precisely. System out.print, not ln. When it comes to read pattern, we only do print, as your friend suggested. And right here, we put the prompt. How do we know which prompt it will be, which text it will be? We look at the sample IO. It says value. Okay, so I'll do that. After the colon, there is a space. We place a space. The second step will be absorbing the input that you're going to type from the keyboard. How do we absorb the input? We absorb it using the in.java. Okay, guys? From the in.java, which method do you think I should use for this pattern?
In.nextInt.
Because it allows me to enter an integer. And how do we get to use the next int from the int class inside our average value? We're going to use a method. Not really. Oh yeah, we'll create a variable. My bad, Thomas. Let's call it value. And after that,
Now you have to call the other class.
how do we do that like in Java?
The file name and then the method name.
So we type the in class dot, given all the methods are static, they will appear right away in the log. If they were not static, defined as static in the class in, you would not be able to access them. You would need to create an object. So I will need the next int, semicolon. This we call the read pattern, formed of two lines. One line to prompt what we are asking for. The second line to read the value and to store the value into a variable, into a container. Okay, this is step one. Step two, until the user enters -1. Which pattern you think this is?
You can either do this as a while loop or a do while loop, setting up the do before you use value.
Okay. While loop pattern. How do we construct a while loop? So we construct the while loop while based on a condition, open and close, and then we need to update the iterator here. Update the iterator, the value that moves until the condition is met. What do you think our condition is?
While value does not equal -1.
Correct, and very correct. While value is not equal -1, do something here. We'll decide about it later. And then update. What do I mean by update? Update the iterator. Who's the iterator in your opinion in this context?
You need another read pattern to update value.
Maybe we need to look about
Filter variable.
Yeah, we need another read pattern. I agree, Ben. Sorry, I took it in the wrong way. So we need to update the only value that changes, that is value. So we need to read again. But when we read, we remove the int because it's already been initialized or declared elsewhere. You already know the value name. So simply update it. Read the value, check if it satisfies the condition, do something, and then update the value again. What would happen if I don't have those two lines of code, in your opinion?
We would get an infinite loop, I think.
Precisely. The loop will run forever. And then if I do this, I think it will overload ed, and then it will collapse and maybe close the session or something. So let's keep it there. Right, moving on. If there is at least one integer, so if there is at least one value, how do I know if there is one or many?
Count.
I need the count pattern plus what? A guard. What is the guard? A guard is an if statement. Count is greater than or equal, apologies, than 1. So it is the count pattern plus a guard that is an if statement. To start the count pattern, this is step 3, count pattern. To start the count pattern, we need a counter starting from 0, and then we need to update the counter every time we do something. The counter, we do count plus plus. Where do we place the guard? If there is at least one integer, then show. Where do you think we should place the guard?
We do an if on the outside of the while loop.
After we finish doing the sum, we continue step 3, which is guard the count, right? And then we do if count is greater or equal to 1, and right here we do the show pattern. Correct? And obviously this is show or output. I need to start calling an output pattern. My bad. That is step 4. Any questions so far?
Yeah.
Tell me.
So because we have to get the average,
Yeah.
Should we use an array instead of an int? Because an int would just change the value instead of storing it.
You don't have to use an array unless you are storing the values that you are entering.
Isn't that what we're doing?
Not really. We only adding them.
Well, if we're adding them to a sum and counting them, we don't need to keep track of them because those are the only two factors we need to calculate an average. So that's why you don't need an array.
Just to step 5, that is the average, which is the sum divided by count. And for this, we need the sum pattern. We already have the count. So step 5, sum pattern, similar to the count pattern. Int sum equal to 0, and instead of this do something, we update the sum plus equal to value, and at the end the step 4 output pattern system.out.println, and we copy the text and we put the average right there. Okay, now the average is sum divided by count only if you have an integer to print. What do you think I should do right here to get a decimal? What we did before, typecast. Typecast one of them or both will do the same job. Did you see how the plan unfolded step by step, translated from the table to the code? We did not need to store the values into an array. All we care about is adding the sum of these values after they've been entered. Any questions, guys?
Nope.
All right, so for you, do a mark. I'm going to do a mark, see if I get any errors. You get test 1, 2, and 3. Sometimes you have more. Sometimes we give you the test log, sometimes we don't. If I run the code right now, value, let's say 5, 2, minus 1, 3.5. If I run again, and straight away I put minus 1, it should print nothing, because I do not have an integer. So my code so far works very well. Please complete it and then hit mark. First run to ensure it runs perfectly, and then hit mark. And also complete this table with the patterns I showed you. At the end, submit your patterns to the pattern book. Okay, guys? Make sure you submit it before end of the class. Did you all type the word to code table for average value? Every time you refresh, of course, you're gonna lose it. This is why I gave you this template. So if I want to put it properly here, read pattern, and then while loop pattern, and then count pattern with guard, and the guard is count greater or equal to 1, and then output pattern, and then I need sum divided by count. So definitely I need the sum pattern. This is what you need to submit in the pattern book. All good?
Yep, all good.
Okay, so if you finish with this, proceed to the code, complete it. I'm just gonna leave it there for a few minutes and make sure it runs perfectly, then hit the mark to do a submission. Good question. For Jupyter, for example, you can do it as text only. See how they have these patterns right here? You can copy and paste the patterns as text only. Just put Lab2 and place it as text only.
We only submit to the Jupyter once we finished all the
patterns, yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, and then the code you are doing submissions every time you hit mark. So the pattern book, you could do it later on when we finish all the patterns. Copy and paste the text, hit submit, that's it. Any questions about what we're doing and how we're doing with the pattern book and the code? Or you want to ask me a question about the average value? Please do ask. It's good to ask, regardless of the question. Let me know when we can proceed to count vowels. Guys, finished with the average value? Can we move forward?
Yep.
Everyone? We good?
Yep.
On board?
Good to go.
Okay. I trust everyone completed the average value algorithm. Now let's do something else. Not difficult at all, something easy, different style. Also, we're gonna read in a character this time until we hit full stop. And then show the number of lowercase vowels. When we translated that into the table, we said read the character until, so read pattern, while loop pattern, and then show to show the number of lowercase vowels. Number means count pattern. Lowercase vowels means count with condition. The condition, we need to check every character whether it is a vowel or not, and only lower cases, not upper cases. Okay, let's spend maybe another 10 minutes on the pattern book, and then I'll review that together with you. Okay, try to complete it and complete it right here. So if you refresh the page, the data doesn't go away. All right, 10 minutes, guys.
Excuse me.
Yep.
Are we
Okay.
meant to be submitting the tutor demo as well, or that doesn't count?
No, it doesn't. You don't have to.
Okay, all good.
No
Thank you.
worries. And how we going, by the way, with the count vowels, everybody? Do you need any help with the table?
Oh, all good.
All good? It's easy once you understand the way it works.
Here's me.
Yeah.
In the Jupyter pages or patterns book, do we put our exact solutions in JavaScript? Or
No, only the pattern or code, this stuff. Can you see my screen?
oh, yep.
So you could say exercise 1 and copy and paste.
Okay, yep, makes sense to me. Thank you.
No worries, no worries. Shall we go through it together? Ready, guys?
Yep.
Okay. We are going to read characters this time around and count how many lowercase vowels. Yeah, I can try. Where's this stupid thing? We could create new, maybe text file. And let me get my, let's say I'm submitting this, I'll copy that, and then I'll go back to Jupyter. Job's done. And right here, you could say exercise 1, lab 2, something like that. Make sense? Paulo?
Yep.
And then hit the submit button when you're ready. It's too easy. This is why I gave you this template, so you could keep it with you. It's neater in Word document. Now let's go back to the make sure file. Yeah, obviously you gotta save it in. Yeah, you can submit all of them in single one. You could submit all of them as I did. In a single document. And then let's say you have another one like that. Okay, makes sense? Osman? And also you hit save as well to make sure the file is saved, and then you submit. You could change the file name right here. Let's say Lab2. Okay, this is my
submit. Does that submit just the file that's open, or all of our files in the Jupyter notebook?
Just as the file is open.
Okay.
Once you save it, it's there. All right, can I continue here?
Yep.
All right. So this time around, we're going to read a character instead of an integer, but regardless, a read pattern is a read pattern. Code details is not totally important at this stage. Until we hit full stop, so it is while pattern. While loop pattern. Show is an output pattern, and then the number of means count pattern, lowercase with guard. The guard is character is lowercase. Makes sense? Now you could copy that and throw it into Jupyter, into the same file of Lab2. Copy this the same way. I'm going to go to my parent book, and it takes a minute to load, and then I'm going to go to Lab2. Lab2 is still there, and this is very good. Exercise 2. Exercise 1. And makes sense, everybody? Hit save, submit. There are two distinct patterns then. Obviously, they are merged when it comes to code-wise. But yes, you could say read loop pattern, read while loop pattern, and then merge them in the same context as you did. When you are using pattern, it is best to use the more specific item at once. Obviously, you could choose to combine them. That's fair enough. Guys, can I move to coding? If you finish the exercise 2 pattern book.
Yep, definitely.
Sure.
All right. So let's have a look at add now in count vowels. The same process. I'm going to need to read a character, and we copy the text from the sample IO and place it inside the print. Then this time around we're reading characters, so we declare char C, declare a variable character equals in the next char. Step. The second step is what? A while loop pattern. So the context of while loop, while open and close, and then repeat or update iterator. So I'm going to ask you please to tell me what to put there first. What should I put here?
C not equal to full stop.
Not equal to full stop like this?
No, single quotations.
Why is a single quotation in your opinion?
Because it's a character, not a string.
Fair enough. And instead of update iterator, what should I put? What needs updating at every turn?
The next character, so C.
So I will copy the read again, and as Ben suggested in the chat, we could have combined these together. So if we don't put this update at the bottom of the while loop, we'll get an infinite loop. Now moving on to the output pattern. Output pattern is system out the print ln at this stage. But what do I need to print? Vowel count. So I need to count how many vowels, which take us to the next step, that is the number of, which is the count pattern. So I will introduce a counter. Count equals 0. And this count equals 0 only updates with a condition. So at the end of the day, I'm definitely going to output count. But I only output count if it is lowercase. Then if it is lowercase, count plus plus. How do I condition a lowercase, in your opinion?
Just use an entire string of chars or ors. So if letter double equals a character, then you got the piping pipe grep symbol, or letter equals E, or letter equals I. don't know. It's good.
If it's lowercase vowel, sorry, Ben. Let's not forget we're only counting vowels. This is one option. Ben says we could use this AIOEU. This is a string dot contains the string has the class string has a method called contains, and this contains method verify if a substring or sequence of characters are contained within this original string. This is one way of doing it. Obviously, in programming, there are at least multiple ways. Or Josh was saying a switch, which is also workable or doable. If you can see in the chat, Josh provided us with another solution, which is absolutely correct. So this is a solution from Ben, and Josh has a solution, and there's obviously a third one as well, and maybe a fourth. Yeah, and Kyle also provided us with if character. Maybe I'll copy all of them and type them in the code. Hang on a second. So this is provided to us by Ben, and this is provided to us by Joshua, and I'm gonna comment it out because it will not compile unless I do so. This is Josh's solution, and we have another solution from Kyle. Ben means you did the reading and research, which makes it your solution. And I'm gonna copy Kyle's one as well, which is a if statement. Instead of a letter, I'm gonna use C because I'm entering C, so we don't get mixed up. And in Kyle's solution, it's exactly similar to Josh, but instead of a switch, he is using an if. And you could tell from the if statement right here that you could do a multiple condition into an if statement. This is the same, multiple cases, multiple conditions. If you want to say C equals to A or E, we can't say do C equals to A. We have to say C equals to A or C equals to E or C equals to I. So we have to keep the sequence proper. 3 cases, they will both give you correct solution. Feel free to use which one you like. I'm gonna run the code, and then I'm gonna enter QAERIU dot count is 4. Okay. I'm gonna keep the code right here for you guys. I'm gonna try to make it as compact as possible. As I said, this is Kyle's solution, this is Josh's solution, and this is Ben's solution. They all work fine. This one is the shortest, fanciest, as Kyle said. Any questions about this task? And once you finish, of course, mark. When we mark, I get all clear. This is how you get your marks. For this week, it's 0%. For next week, it's worth 2% every lab. Have we finished, everyone?
Yep.
We good?
Yep.
Okay, so the middle average is not the most tricky, it is little bit more tricky than the others, nothing fancy. So please spend 5 minutes or so on the pattern book alone, and then I'll help you with it, and then we'll jump to the coding. Okay? And please try to complete your pattern right here in this table, so you could keep a log of it. Everyone, how are we going with exercise 3?
Yeah, good.
Yeah.
Finished everything.
Easy. The first two steps is reading an integer until -1 is similar to exercise 2. So we're going to read an integer and use a while loop pattern to verify. If it is not -1, we continue. Also, as Ben suggested, we could combine those into, we call it read loop pattern. Okay? Yes, correct. Since we're getting rid of those smallest and biggest, we should take out 2 of the count as well, because we've taken out of this 2 of the sum. So if there are at least 3 values, so we're going to count with guard, and the guard is count greater than 2. We're counting from 0, so 0, 1, 2. And then we're going to need to output, and we output the average minus biggest minus smallest. To get the average, we need the sum pattern, and also we're going to need to calculate the average equals sum divided by count. But right here, they're asking us to divide the sum minus max minus min divided by count. Since we are taking out min and max from the count, from the average, so it is sum minus min minus max divided by count minus 2, which means we're going to need also the max pattern, and also we're going to need the min pattern. Okay, you could copy this and add it to your Jupyter file. Copy, go back to the pattern book on Jupyter, text map lab 2, and I'm going to update. This is lab 2 exercise 3, and then submit, and this will be your pattern for this week. Okay guys, I'll bring back the Word document. Please ask me a question if there is something unclear. Okay guys, have we finished with the table for exercise 3? Can I continue to the coding? Okay. Now, in the beginning, we're going to read an integer until -1. This is similar to exercise 2. So I copied that from exercise 2 and I pasted it right here. We read a value and we store that value into a variable called num. Now we're going to need also a while pattern, while loop pattern, and which updates the value of num with every turn. The condition again will be num not equals to -1. So this is step 1 and 2. Step 3, if there were at least 3 variables, which means I'm going to count how many values I'm entering. I need a counter equals 0, and then I need to update count ++ at some stage. the second part, if there were at least 3 values, then show. So outside the loop, if count greater than 2, then use the output parent system.out.println, and the text is middle average. Now what's left to do is calculating the middle average. Okay? So first, to calculate the average, we need the sum. Int sum equals 0. And we need to update the sum with number at every turn. So far, nothing new. But there are 2 things I need to pay attention to. When I calculate the average, right here, sum divided by count, I need to print out the sum minus min minus max. So minus min minus max, which I don't have at this stage. So I need to introduce an integer called min equal to something, and an integer called max equals to something. What should be the values of min and max in your opinion? There are a couple of ways to do it, but there is one that is fancy or elegant.
Every time you get a new value, can you check it against the current min and max value? And then if it's like bigger
I'm
than
not
min.
there yet. I'm talking about the initial value of min and sum. Is it 0? Is it length?
Oh, just set it to the original value that you read in.
Also, Ben suggested something very important. When you are setting the min, set it to the biggest. When you are setting the min, set it to the biggest value provided by your system. To get the biggest value, use the integer class dot max value. When you are setting the max, set it to the smallest value, integer dot min value. Why I'm using this process? Every number you enter will be bigger than min, and every number you enter will be this is min value, will be bigger than max, and every number you enter will be smaller than min. When we have that combination, then we can say if number is less than min, then make min equal this number, and then if number is greater than max, then make max this number. Of course, you could initialize them to different values, it will still work, but I find this the most elegant because any number you enter is going to be between those 2 values. And then you adjust min and max accordingly, and then you update sum and count. And when you finish, you take out min and count, min and max from the sum. Therefore, you're going to minimize also 2 from the count because you are taking 2 values out. And always do not forget to typecast. An integer division, we want to make it a double division.
How come you're using next char instead of next int?
I'm using next char, next int.
And below as well.
Is definitely we're not reading characters. It's next int. I think I copied it from the one before.
Oh, right, okay, yeah.
So let's run. And if we enter the same test case, 2, 5, 6, 7, 8, 87 and then -1, the output is 6.5. If we mark, all test cases are correct. Any questions about the exercise? We needed to pay attention that if we take out min and max, we also need to take out 2 from the count. This is the only tricky part, I would say. I still have 4 minutes before I jump to the next class. If you have any questions, please do ask. Again, this video is recorded. I'll post the recording later. I'll try to put it in the recording on MS Teams in our channel. If it does not work, due to the size of the file, I'll stream it and then post it again so you can view the streaming. Guys, do you have any questions about today, how we going to be conducting our labs? Obviously, next week, you're going to have to rely more on your own coding when it comes to your own exercises. I'll definitely give you guidance, but since they will be marked, I will hold back on the solution. You have to come up with your own solution to get your own marks. I'll definitely do the demos and the pattern book that comes along with it and answer all your questions, that's for sure.
Can I just confirm the way that the patterns book should look at the end of this class?
Yeah, I will show you my pattern book. Now, given that you've submitted, you would have a file like this called lab2.txt, correct? No, you don't. You don't.
Yeah.
Not next to the pattern book theme. And then if you click on this, you would have the pattern book from 1 and 2, and then I'm going to copy the third one, then put it right here, and then this is lab 2 exercise 3. If you do not save, it's not going to work. So first save to save the file, and then submit. This is how lab 2 should look like. Okay?
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
No worries. And every week we create a file like this on Jupyter. Guys, now if you don't have any further questions, we will end this lab here. Thank you very much and good luck with your
Sorry,
studies.
sir, I've got one question.
Oh, okay.
Is there meant to be a tick that shows up after you submit?
For the pattern book?
Yeah.
No.
Okay.
Ensure that you saved first, because if you don't save, let's say I just posted this one and I didn't save, it will be deleted. First save and then submit, and that's it.
Oh, good.
Okay?
Thank you.
No problem at all. All right, guys. Thank you very much, and I'll see you in next week.
Thank you.
You're
Thank you.
welcome.
Thank you.
All right.